I am not great at explaining things like this, and even now I do not fully understand what happened. Some parts of it do not feel like memories anymore. They feel like something I inherited. This is Mr. Folklore from India. What I am about to tell you is not something I went looking for. It feels more like something that was already waiting in my life. Usually, every family has some traditions that get passed down over time. But in my family, it always felt like something more than that. Every New Year's Eve, the village celebrated, but my family kept to ourselves without any celebrations. I did not understand any of this when I was a child. I only noticed how my father changed every year on December 31st. By evening, his voice would soften, and by night, he barely spoke at all. On that day, he would bathe carefully, wear plain clothes, and stop eating after sunset. If anyone asked where he was going, he would only say he would be back soon. That was just how it was. He always went to the same place. It was an old Hanuman temple on the edge of our village. It was not like the temples you see in pictures. No bright paint and no crowds. Growing up, I heard stories about Hanuman all the time. People did not talk about him like a god from books. They spoke about him like someone who still exists. They believe Hanuman is still alive, meditating somewhere in the Himalayas. There is also a sacred place called Shambhala. It is said that even if it is in front of us, normal people cannot see it. Scriptures say all the immortals stay there guarding life on earth. Hanuman is also believed to remove evil, and negative energies are said to fear even hearing his name. It is also said he is strong enough to hold back things that do not belong in this world. In my family, the belief was simple. That temple was not just a place of worship. Hanuman was still there, watching and guarding something that should never be allowed to wander freely. According to my grandmother, this all started hundreds of years ago. My ancestor from nearly 14 generations back was known in nearby villages as a spiritual person who removed evil. People approached him when things felt wrong. There was no shouting and no frightening rituals. He believed negative things were not meant to be fought directly. They should be guided away quietly before they learned how to stay here in this world. One night, while traveling between villages, he came across something unusual. It was not violent or loud, but it was simply there watching him eye to eye. The elders never tried to describe it clearly. They only said it did not belong to time the way we understand it. After that night, he started a ritual. It was done once every year before midnight, always on December 31st. The ritual was never meant to defeat anything. It was only meant to delay it. For generations, no one questioned this ritual, and it was performed every year without fail. A few years back, my grandfather was ill, and the ritual was not performed that year. Since he was ill, it was my father's turn to perform the ritual, but he hesitated to perform it. It's not that he forgot his responsibility, but there may be reasons my father couldn't explain. I feel like sometimes fear can hide behind responsibility. Since the ritual was not done at the right time, from the next day, strange things started happening in nearby villages. Nothing alarming at first, but something felt off. Cattle began collapsing without any visible injuries. People complained of rapid fevers. Even doctors were unable to find the reason for the health issues. After a few days, people started dying. 3 deaths were reported. They were from different villages and different families. There was no clear cause for their deaths. Those deaths became a mystery that stayed in people's minds. Even I started thinking it was something beyond science. People felt that talking about it might draw attention to that negative energy, so they whispered silently. Seeing the situation of the village, after a few days, my father decided to perform the ritual. That day, he reached the temple late because of the climate. At around 11:30 p.m., the power went out across our village. There was no storm, no wind, but only darkness. The air felt heavier than usual. Even the insects seemed quieter. Dogs started barking with no aggression or panic from one side of the village. After some time, all the dogs stopped barking at once. At 12:10 a.m., my father stepped outside. I stood in the doorway watching him leave. The road to the temple was not paved. It was a narrow dirt path through fields and old trees. That night, mist hung low over the ground. It was not thick, but it was enough to blur the path. As he walked, the only sounds were his footsteps and the soft rustle of leaves. There was no wind and no night birds. Halfway to the temple, there was a bend where the trees grew closer together. Even during the day, the path felt closed in. That night, the temperature dropped suddenly. When he reached the temple, he saw oil lamps already lit. He searched, but found no one. There were no traces of anyone's presence. He also noticed the bells were gently moving on their own. He did not touch them, and there was no heavy wind. If he did not touch them and there was no wind, then how did they move? Somehow my father completed the ritual, but it was too late. When my father came back home, his clothes smelled of damp stone and burnt oil. He did not speak that night or the next day. Within a week, the sickness stopped. There were no new deaths and no new fevers. Life slowly returned to normal. But something else started happening. People began having the same kind of dream. In the dream, they were standing in familiar places, like fields, courtyards, and roads they had walked all their lives. Apart from this, they also said they saw something far away. It was not moving. It was just standing there watching. Without any nightmares, many villagers started waking up at exactly 3:17 a.m. They only felt sudden awareness with their hearts racing. Children complained of exhaustion. Teachers noticed fear and confusion in them without any clear reason. One man from a neighboring village walked into a pond late at night. Later, he said he thought someone was standing there waiting for him. People visited doctors and priests. Doctors blamed stress, and priests spoke of imbalance. No explanation stayed the same for long. Then, just as suddenly as it began, everything stopped. Years later, I asked my grandmother about that year. She stayed quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, she said something I still think about. She said the ritual does not protect people. It protects time. It keeps things from becoming familiar or settling in. That's why no one can describe it the same way, and the stories never match. Because of what happened that year, we came to know the ritual must be completed before midnight on New Year's Eve. Since then, it has never been delayed again. My father continued it, and when it was time, I took over. Every New Year's Eve, I walked the same path through the same fields past the same bend in the trees. Some years the air feels heavier, and some years the bells move slightly on their own. I do not ask for signs, and I do not look for proof. Some things do not need confirmation. They only need to continue. People sometimes ask why I still believe rituals matter in a modern world. I never give them a straight answer, because I do not think my family is the only one doing this. There may be others in villages, cities, and in places no one talks about. They may be quietly maintaining traditions they do not fully understand, not for faith or reward, but because stopping feels dangerous. We may never know what would happen if everyone stopped. But my friend, do remember, if you are listening to this on New Year's Eve, somewhere someone like me is standing in silence, making sure the next year begins safely for humankind.